right, welcome into the Tim Blaine Show. This is a show we're doing tonight about Peru. We're here with Zak Godwin. Zak Godwin is an American adventurer that has made many trips through the years to Peru and is somebody that has studied the ancient megalithic structures, who's also been a patron to the people of Peru and their cultures. And he's here with us live tonight in the studio. How you doing, Zak?
Very well, thank you. Great honor to be here, Tim.
It's a great honor to have you, and it's a when you look at the amount of work that went into just gathering this information, it's amazing. You did, 5 trips to Peru?
Yeah, I've been there 5 times.
5 times. Wow, that's great. So what was the attraction to Peru? Why did you say Peru?
Well, I never thought I'd go 5 times. I wanted to go one time to see the megalithic structures. I'd seen them on television. I was like, I'd like to see that in person. I'd like to look at those things and touch them and see them for real and make it be real. So I sort of had a voice tell me, hey, you should go. You should go down there. And I was like, I don't know anybody down there. I don't know anything about it. I've never been there. I was like, I should go by myself. Like, it's kind of weird. But I did end up doing that, and that led to the situation we're going to unfold and talk about.
Yeah, so what's just right off the bat, probably I think most people wondering, what's the trip like to get to Peru? Is it an arduous thing? It's hard to do?
Yeah, well, it's strangely not as far as you'd imagine from Miami, which is the southernmost point, I think, in the United States. It's about 5 hours to Lima, which is the capital, 5.5 hours. And I always took direct flights, so I know there's other ways to go, but I would take the direct flights. A lot of flights leave from either Houston or Miami or California, but I left from Miami and would go to Lima. The first time I went, I stayed a couple days in Lima to see what that was. Lima's a giant city. It's got 9 million people. About 6 million of them live on the outskirts in pretty severe poverty. But the city itself is in its modern parts is just as modern as anywhere else. But the main part of the journey and so forth was the hour flight into Cusco, over the Andean mountains, into Cusco, which is the heart of the Inca Empire, which is where most people start their journey to go to Machu Picchu and so forth.
And so we have that on the map up here, and this is Lima, where we have our cursor circling. That is, you say that's the easy part of the journey, I guess. Yeah,
getting there. It's about an hour and 10 minutes to fly from there into Cusco. But I have never gone the roads, but the roads are about 22 hours by bus, and it's very dangerous because it's through the Andean mountains and so forth. Even my friends in Peru are like, don't do that. I still would like to do it because it's the very old, unexplored, small part of Peru. But people go to Cusco, and that was the heart of the Inca Empire when the Europeans showed up, and that's where the majority of the Inca government was seated at the time. So that's sort of the beginning of the Sacred Valley. You see that little loop there, and those loops include Sacsayhuamán, which is right in Cusco, and then the second loop, which is named as Ollantaytambo, another sacred site, and then Machu Picchu. A lot of people hike to Machu Picchu. They like to go there and do the 3 to 9 day walk in, have guides, and hike as a group. I did not do that, but that is a thing that people do. Interestingly, there's about 7 different paths into that are known now into Machu Picchu. The altitude when you land in Cusco is 11,000 feet, so you're coming down into this valley at 11,000 feet. So when you get off the plane, you're real dizzy. And it's strange because one of the things that they use there is coca leaves to help with the altitude. So even in the airport, they're giving out coca tea and coca leaves, which is in our society, associated with cocaine and big no-no. But coca leaves and cocaine are pretty as night and day as you could be. Cocaine being an extract of 1 or 2 elements of the 15. But the leaves themselves help people, and the workers use them just to deal with the altitude. It's an old thing. They just chew them, make tea.
And what we're looking at here on we have some pictures up, and this is from Pumapunka.
That is correct. Yeah, and which is on the border of Bolivia and Peru.
And so this is a little bit further from where you were staying, or?
Yes. Now this picture, of all the pictures we've shown so far, I took them. I didn't take this picture. We just included this to show some of the megalithic structures. I did not get to see this in person, but these are really important and very interesting. To the culture over there is the Amaru culture, which is not the same as the Inca culture, the Quechua culture. So that's different. This is on the other side of Lake Titicaca, which borders Bolivia, and really fascinating. I'd really like to go here yet. I have not seen these, but there's just so much to see. I mean, almost everywhere you look in Peru is full of amazing megalithic structures.
Yeah, these structures obviously look very modern in a lot of ways.
They really do. They look like they're meant to interlock. I've heard people talk about it might have been a port. Now, this is, I believe, even higher altitude. I think the altitude at this is around 13,000
Okay.
feet. So high desert, arid, like there's no trees. It's above the tree line.
Yeah, and you can see in the back there's really nothing back there.
I did not get there, but that is a place I would much like to go. This is the Nazca Lines, which is in the south. So the part that we'll talk about, that I will show pictures that I actually took, are all in the Sacred Valley. But this is another part of Peru, the southern part, a different culture. And we've all seen these pictures before. Totally incredible.
So what we're showing here is that in Peru, not only are the things that we're going to really focus on, but there are all these.
So much more. So much more.
It's just unbelievable.
The jungles, the northern sections. Now, this is pretty interesting. This I did see in the museums there, which is a strange phenomenon of Peru. Many people are aware of the elongated skulls, which are very interesting. And some of them have markings of what they call the fontanelle, like where the three different sections join, and some of them don't, which is really interesting. These ones appear not to, which is some of this was done by flatboarding the children's heads when they were young, and some of it clearly wasn't. It seems like they were almost trying to imitate something that they saw. One weird thing about these skulls is they apparently have a lot of red hair. Like I saw red hair in some of the mummies, which was interesting because I didn't see anybody with red hair in Peru.
And I've also heard where some of these, like the stitching in the skulls, where it would normally be for a human, like a human as we know, they're different on these.
Yeah, that's what I was speaking of. Sometimes they have that, like our skulls apparently have like 3 sections that join with the little lines, and these often didn't have any, which was rather strange. And they often had some rather strange teeth. This is one of those things that modern archaeology and science is a little bit silent on because it doesn't quite fit in the picture. So here we come to Sacsayhuamán, which is the giant famous megalithic fortress at the top of the valley of the city of Cusco, which is very beautiful and amazing. And what we see left, all the pictures we're going to see here, are what's left over from the Spaniards tearing it down to build their churches in Cusco. This is the stuff they couldn't tear down. It was just too big. And here we go to Machu Picchu. You can zoom in on some of that and see all the little llamas and the details. It's just amazing. You're here at this is about 9,000 feet.
And what's so interesting is let me zoom back out, is we get to this part and you can't really tell the scale, but then you start zooming in and you realize
it's just astounding.
There's people over here.
Yeah. Now looking at this, you can see where they rebuilt the top. The modern part below that looks newer is actually older, and the stuff on top is what they've done to repiece it together. Machu Picchu was rediscovered by Hiram Bingham around 1910, but obviously it was there long before he came along. It was all overgrown and covered in jungles. So this is what they've done to clear and restore and rebuild the best they can.
So you can kind of see the line of delineation, I guess, right here is what you're talking about.
And even go down lower, you can see the lines below that, like right there where you are. That's even older. Some of that stuff there appears to be possibly even older, and then they may be rebuilt on top of that and then rebuilt. But the stuff where it starts getting where it's not put together, you can tell that was all done in modern times. The stuff where the rocks look melted together, like you can't even get a piece of paper between them, that's all older.
Like this is older down here.
Yeah, that might even be some more modern. I would say that's more modern rebuilds. The terracing is all over the country. That's how they grow food on the mountains. They terrace and there's a little example of that behind those people. But they use those terraces to grow food, which is pretty interesting. And the whole of the Andean mountains seem to be covered in these ancient terraces. Not that they're all being used, but many of them are. There's a really nice picture. This is also Machu Picchu.
So when you landed there and you started to get acclimated to seeing this stuff, we all have seen these things on National Geographic and programs that are far away from us, far away from our imaginations, but to really be in that moment.
So a little surreal, a little overwhelming. Going up the mountain to Machu Picchu, as you start getting into the clouds on the bus ride up there, I started thinking about my friend Stan, who had passed away. He had committed suicide, actually, and I just felt like he was right there with me. I was almost like tearing up just getting there. The thing about Machu Picchu isn't really what you're seeing, but where it is. Like, the buildings are amazing, but if you could do a 360 view, there's like 5 mountains that surround that. There's one of them right there. They're called picus, and they surround the whole space, and you're in a sacred spot. That's why they built it there. It's not sacred because they built it. They built it there because of the spot it is. Nowadays, Machu Picchu has like 2,500 people a day going there, so it's a bit. It's quite a thing to go. Like, you can't see it all in a day. You need like 3 days to go through the whole thing.
And this is the cloud line. You're actually in the clouds up here.
Which comes and covers stuff. And like, you could be looking at that picture and 5 minutes later, that could all be covered in clouds and you couldn't see anybody. It's really, you are in the clouds. It's really interesting.
It's an amazing picture. And you took these pictures.
I took all these pictures we've seen, yeah, except for the very first 2 of Nazca. And so this is, if you go into Machu Picchu, there's 5 different things you can go off to, but you can basically pick one of them because it's a good long hike. This took about an hour to hike up to from the base. You turn left. This is an entrance called the Temple of the Sun. This is one of the hiking trails that leads down. You would come in here and go down to Machu Picchu.
These switchbacks is part of
that's how I hiked up there. And this is the entrance called the Temple of the Sun.
Okay, now just
look
to
down
show,
at that river.
Yeah, let's zoom in here. I want to
how far down you
show people what we're looking at.
That's a train.
Yeah, a train.
The town below is called Agua Caliente, is hot water, and they have famous springs there for people come and bathe. But I would guess that's about a 1,200-foot drop down.
So let's go back out just to give you perspective on this.
Yeah, you're like above the clouds.
Way out there. Now, these are interesting peaks here, too. And these are...
these are called Pichus, like mountains, and they believe that all of these have individual spirits, and they all have names, and they all have functions in there.
But that river, it doesn't look like a big river from here, but it is.
That is a big river, yeah. The rivers move fast.
Well, let's see what else we got here. Now, here's another similar shot.
Yeah, we're still looking down from the Temple of the Sun at this point. So I was trying to give some perspective. And so for instance, that's right where we were looking before, and now it's all covered in clouds. You can't even see down there. That was almost the same shot we were looking at. It's the same position.
Right, it's like the terraces without people on them.
Yeah, and then the clouds would come and the clouds would go.
All day long.
Very fast, yeah. It's quite a thing.
Okay.
And here we are back outside of Cusco at Sacsayhuamán, and this is amazing. I would try and get in there. So the other side of that is the valley of the town of Cusco, but these fortresses, they sort of look like a snake. They sort of look like lightning.
Okay, here's where it looks. Now this is more what you were talking about, the melted stones.
Yeah. Can you zoom in? Yeah. Yeah, it's really quite something to see. You're just looking at it and you're just like, how? Why?
There's some people for perspective.
Yeah, and they're on top. So they'd be about coming up to that first level, a little bit down.
Now it looks like a veneer, sort of like there's a mound of dirt or a terrace of dirt behind there, and like you can see looks like here, I don't know, what's that, a couple feet maybe?
Yeah, that is probably about, that height of that, what you're looking at is probably about 16 feet high. So a person would come to that little white line after the first, right about there would be your head level. It's quite high.
And it's amazing how you had a thought about how this was like musical. You thought it was.
Yeah, studying and looking at it over time, I just suddenly felt like somehow, like, how did they do it? It was like music was involved somehow, because it only fits the way it fits. Each stone could only go in that one spot, like a note sort of. So I don't have any particular enlightened new theories about it, but I just felt like music was involved. Now, there are rumors that the stones danced to, they used sound, but I just felt like music was involved somehow. Or it's assembled like music's assembled.
Now, you're not saying necessarily that the music was, or sound was used to move the stones, but you're saying that it was put together with a sort of an artistic or a musical
Yeah, a little of, but like possibly sound was involved, but I do think sound was involved. I'm not saying they moved the stones or I have any ideas about it, but it just feels like music when you look at it.
Look
like,
at these people down here.
Yeah, look at them. The place is giant. I mean, you could wander around there.
Okay, now I'm going to
days.
back out to show exactly how small
Yeah,
they are over here.
that's how far away I wandered. I mean, you could just wander day and day.
Now you say that this is above the town, and this is over here behind
Yes.
it.
So if you could just zip over that and go down, you drop down probably 1,000 feet down into Cusco. That whole, we'll look at pictures of it, but the other side of that is a giant town of about 400,000 people. There's a little, that's like the outer suburbs of the mountains.
And up on this side as well.
Yeah.
And then behind this.
So people don't realize how close all this is to I landed down there on the airplane.
Yeah, you would think, watching In Search of, that this was in an inaccessible place, but it's in the, you can see major city.
You can
it.
walk down to the Plaza de Armas in about 45, 50 minutes from there. You could be right downtown and have a Starbucks. Okay, there you go. So right behind us would be what we were looking at from the backside, and that's the downtown. See if you can zoom in on the city, like that area right there. Okay, yeah, there's the Plaza de Armas, which was built by the Spanish. Those are famous churches there. A lot of those churches, they took the stones from what we were just looking at to build a lot of this stuff. The Spaniards did when they got there. So some of the Spanish churches are like 400 years old already.
So this would be in the 16...
Yeah, 1600s they were built.
And there's terracotta roofs everywhere.
Everywhere. It's just everywhere.
But it is a big city.
It is a big city. There's a soccer stadium. Yeah, keep panning over. So you can see how big that valley is.
Yeah, I mean, it just keeps going. And the streets look narrow.
Yeah, it is. They weren't designed for cars, I'll tell you that. I mean, some of them you can barely get one car through. And that's old stones. They're not paved. So, there's a soccer stadium, I think. There's the airport.
This is where you flew into right here?
Yeah, that would be the airport. Now, it's pretty hairy coming down out of that, because some of those, if that's at 11,000 feet, you could imagine what your peaks around you are,
And
12,
you're flying,
13, 14.
you're coming in this way,
yeah.
Where the cursor's coming this way.
And some of them are, the flights, the mountains are around 20,000 feet coming over, so it's pretty amazing.
So you're, and behind this, where you can't see, behind us,
if you turned 180, you'd be looking up at the backside of what we were just looking at before.
So you can see that when you're coming in to the airport? Or?
I did not see Sacsayhuamán coming in.
Okay.
Sacsayhuamán. I didn't see that because we came in from that way. That way is actually facing west, so that would be towards the ocean.
Okay, that's a really wonderful picture. Okay,
Now there's that's the Plaza de Armas in Cusco that we just saw from perspective at night. This is real pretty. It's beautiful.
So it looks much larger while we're in here, then we're looking at this major long view.
It's quite large. It's several football fields wide. It's big, and there's all kind of events that happen there
and odd looking vehicles.
Oh yeah, look at it. Look at those little things.
Is that a two wheeler?
I don't know. Yeah, anything that you could get to move, they'll turn into a taxi. They'll use it.
So these don't even look like cars that are manufactured. They look like they're...
Yeah, people just chop them up, anything you get going. Look at those streets, these cobblestones. It's wild. I sat on those steps a lot and just watched people.
I can see why. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that sunset is really lovely. Now,
these are the old cathedrals. Yep.
So the stones...
They took these to build. Yeah, they would go up there and grab all those stones and bring them down. Much of the stuff that's left is just stuff they couldn't move or take apart. Now, the theories about what we were looking at forward, they may have been 60 feet tall in the days. Like, it may have been these... No one's really sure what it looked like. Because it was... one of the things to realize is that the Incas were probably, like, the end of dynasty rather than, like, the height of empire. Like, that stuff had been there a long time, and they were just who happened to be running it when the Spaniards showed up. The story that's told is, like, this is what they built. They did all this stuff, but... As you get to know the people there, they talk a lot about, pre-Inca. The Incas were just the bad boys running the show when they got there.
All right, and here we have...
And they call this the White Savior. Jesus is over the whole town, so he'd be up by Sacsayhuamán where we just were.
I think we have a picture of that from a distance, but we'll point it out if we come across it.
Yeah, I think we have a perspective, or maybe it was in one of them.
It might have been that last one here.
Is he over in the corner on the left?
I think that might be.
I think there's another one coming up.
I think we put two in here. So
yeah, there's another one coming.
All right, so let's. Okay, so we're going to see that from the distance for perspective.
Yeah.
And this is some of the pre-Inca walls here.
Yep.
And the staircase and everything.
Yep, that's right where we were looking, where the people were standing before.
That's amazing. That you could be... this is, what, 1,000 years? 1,000... We don't know.
We don't know. I mean, what the official story is that, which is classic, European. It was built when we showed up, so it was built in the 1500s. But clearly, this stuff was built thousands of years. It feels really old.
All right, here's a... Look, we can close up and get some details.
It's fascinating.
It looks like we have a little separation going on here.
A little bit.
That'd be really interesting to pop a camera back in there, like one of these little remote cameras.
Some of those you can't even get a piece of paper in, and it's flat, straight back. It's just like why. It's quite astounding, like as to why it would ever be built that way.
It's amazing.
If they couldn't mold them, it's rather interesting. And see, look at the little hole they filled on the top. That's what they can do now. So clearly, it's not. The technology is not around.
Now, is this an earthquake-prone area?
It is, and strangely, these always hold together, and the churches usually fall apart that the Spaniards built, but the bases of them are often on top of the temples, having this kind of rock, so they usually don't move at all, but the parts that have been built like 400 or 500, 200, 300 years ago always suffer damage.
I wonder if having these unusual shapes play into that, because it's not a uniformity, that they kind of lock together.
That would make sense, yeah. It's a good idea. And this is also Sacsayhuamán above Cusco. This is just more of the walls. I just put a little coloring on that.
It's really interesting to see the way they've beveled these in too.
It's so weird. There's one stone there that has 12 edges. It's just madness. Like how not 4. Like that one there's got 1, 2, 3, 7. It's rather strange.
Yeah, because it seems like it'd be a whole lot easier if this was not the goal, to just go ahead and make them even and put them up. I mean, they have the resources and the ability to do that if they can cut them like this.
Use squares.
Yeah, just say, hey, let's just go ahead and make them all 12 by 12.
That's why it's like music. A song wouldn't be the same if every note wasn't
right. It'd be
where it went.
Yeah,
so that's what made me think about it.
That's interesting. Very, very perceptive, I think, too. That looks like the other side or backwards.
Yeah, it's the same picture we saw reverse, and that's where I was standing in.
Okay, all right.
So we're still in Cusco. This is the beginning of the journey, and this is another perspective shot of the walls, which are interestingly one of the Inca or Andean worldviews is the 3 different worlds, like the world we're in, the world above, and the world below. It's sometimes symbolized by the serpent and the puma and the condor, the conscious world, the subconscious, and the superconscious. Or earth, heaven, and hell, whichever way to look at it. But the serpent, a lot of these things are designed after the snake, the puma, and the condor in the shape of. So I don't know if that was lightning. This is an interesting thing. I just felt like this was also at Sacsayhuamán. It just seemed like water erosion. It looked like it was all been underwater at one point, which is kind of unbelievable when you think about how high up in the air you are. But that looks like ocean type.
It looks as if this had been hot at one time.
Yeah.
And it melted into place, like it cooled quickly.
Yeah.
Is what it sort of looks like, but that would be, basalt or whatever, I guess, if that happened. But
there's people that say there's a whole thing underneath Sacsayhuamán, and there was a big explosion there one time, and this is what was left. Like there may have been a lake in the valley where the Cusco city was. There may have been a lake at that height. That's pretty deep down the rabbit hole of geological theories.
Yeah, and I also heard that the Puma Punka, which we had looked at earlier on, and people thought that Titicaca had possibly overrun and caused some of the damage that destroyed the site.
I've heard people say that those blocks were possibly used as a port, a way to divide the water. Interesting. Yeah. Water is a big part of the thing there. The rivers, they straightened a lot of the rivers out. Very interesting, though, to see that right next to what you were just looking at with all those musical blocks.
Well, that is so interesting to see this because, I mean, you have...
Something was going on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this has stridation marks. It looks like an extrusion of like Play-Doh or something.
Yeah, very much.
So, very interesting. All right, what do we have here?
And we are still above Cusco. These are just different shots of
further away.
Sacsayhuamán.
Or different angle.
Yep.
Very nice. Let's move on to something else here.
And that's the last one of me there. Just saying hi, but we could click on.
And then there's all kinds of there. You can see that the
edges of the town.
Yeah, a lot of it. Really, that's a lot of housing. And are these poor housing up in here? Or?
You know, you're sort of better off being up on the hills in some of the ways, but Peru is a poor country in general, but those are pretty nice. That's pretty nice up there.
Very interesting. And we're going to see some more construction stuff as we go on, too.
Construction's always going on.
It's amazing.
Now, this is Ollantaytambo, which is one of my favorite towns. I don't have as many pictures of this, but this is a really special place. This is about an hour and a half, 2 hours from, 2.5 hours from Cusco, part of the Sacred Valley. And this is a really interesting place where some of the Incas did run away from Cusco and the Spaniards and have one of their more successful battles here. They had... Oh, this is interesting.
Oh, it jumped.
It jumped back to that one.
There we go.
One more head.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, this is Ollantaytambo. And these rocks, they were even more melded together. These looked way older when I got here. This seemed way older than Sacsayhuamán.
It's interesting because this staircase...
That's all modern. That's what they did to build up to it. Like, this is what they did to try to replace it. But these were just... I just couldn't get enough of these. And see those handles?
I see that.
They all have handles on them, which is rather odd. Like they were lifting them some way or something. I don't know, but...
And they're different.
They're different rocks. They're a little bit... To me, they seemed older. And now you're climbing up a mountain that's very steep to get up here. And at the top, the next picture we're going to see in a second after you finish looking...
Now look at this. Is that a knob or is that an indention?
No, it's a outcropping.
And it's...
Yeah, I know. There's no mortar involved, by the way. It's just placed there, and you literally often can't get a piece of paper.
Now, this is a little bitty. Now, they could be, I guess, breaking these things off and filing them down, or, as heavy as that is. It would be interesting to see modern engineering, what they would do to
try to replicate that?
Yeah.
I don't know how they would. They said the stones danced into place is one of the rumors or the legends.
Yeah, interesting. So
so you walk up the stairway and turn left, and you're going to come on the next picture, which is, this is really worth looking at. The scale doesn't really, is hard to catch here, but those are monstrous. And when I saw them, you can really zoom in on them. You see they even have the Cusco cross on there, but
look,
they felt like, I felt like I was looking, the first thing that popped in my mind was like Atlantis. Like they seemed to be like 10,000 years old. I was looking at something I knew I had no chance of understanding, but it was just amazing.
There's another outcropping that looks like it was carved into place.
That's about how tall a person would be. Like your head would come right above that. So that
really?
shows how big the stones
so?
are. Yeah, it's about 6 feet.
Okay,
so these things are about
Holy moly.
16 feet tall, and they're like, it's just impossible to think about getting them up there, how thick and heavy these things are.
This is interesting. Look, there's like patterns that are in here that it could have been worn down. Maybe they were... it'd be interesting to just kind of spend a whole lot of time there measuring. And
really is. And people are doing it. And the one thing they know is this rock didn't come from there. It came from about, I think it was around 100 miles away. They figured out the quarrying site, which is mind-boggling.
Look at this straight line.
Yeah. And there may be actually a rope, like a wire there keeping people off.
I think you're right.
That's what that is actually.
All right.
There.
I thought that was something that's carved in, because anytime you see something that...
Yeah, that was really special. This thing really took my breath away. There was something here. I was like, I don't know what I'm seeing.
You got these holes here.
Yep.
In here. And then now, is this something like, what's behind this? Is it a solid...
So you can walk up on top of that, see how there's... You go,
look at that.
Yeah, that's neat. That's always in there. The stairway representing the upworld and the downworld once again. But you can go up on top of that. It was real hard to get a picture with no people in it because it's such a crowded place. And that's just a picture, like if you turn and look down. That's if you zoom in on that. Like that's how I don't know how they got those rocks up there, but that's how. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the city of Ollantaytambo. This is just a cool shot. I thought was neat to give a little perspective.
Okay. And that's.
Yep, and that's also the same.
Oh, look at this. These mountains are
unbelievable. Now, if you zoom in on those mountains, go over to the right a little bit, and then zoom in. You see those old terraces? Like that was all terraced at one time for farming. Now a lot of that's probably 500, 600, 700 years old, not always in use. But when you start looking at these mountains, you're like, what? All that has been farmed?
And so they've been farming this same area for all these years. I would imagine a lot of the history, if it wasn't megalithic, would probably be like even the stuff that got reused and
repurposed.
So really, the culture seems to be what would be hanging on to these traditions more than the land in a lot of ways.
Absolutely,
I mean, the land is,
people,
but
yeah, the Quechua people there, they speak their own language. You know, a lot of them don't speak Spanish, and boy, they have some of the best French fries you've ever had in the world. It's got like 40 kinds of potatoes down there, purple, orange, yellow. This is the town of Taray, which is outside of Pisac, which Pisac would be about an hour from Cusco. This is a town where I spent a lot of time and got to know some people very well. So this is a shot walking down off the mountain from their house into the little teeny village. This is a small little village. Lots of farming.
Let's see what else we got here.
And here we are entering into a couple of shots of a shaman's temple in his house. This is a shaman named Filder who lives in Taray. And this is the morning of waking up when I didn't realize that there was to be sun or the paintings. I couldn't see any of this stuff at night. We just clicked to these just as the day came through. Little fellow from Chile who was in the ceremony.
And so this is actually inside a Peruvian house.
He built this whole house with the natural wood and adobe. Some of the things are interesting. Being a shaman, he's a Shipibo man, and they were the people that brought the ayahuasca out of the jungles up in the north. And this is far from his land. We're not in the jungles at all. He's far from where he's from. If you zoom in on that picture, you can see that's a giant crocodile skull right there where you have your cursor. Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And those are pictures that he did of his ayahuasca visions. A lot of these shaman, when they do their ceremony, they go into the jungle alone. It's hard to see it on the ceiling, but there's about a 18-foot snakeskin up there, too, on the ceiling, which he had hunted.
Well, that certainly is an interesting picture here.
Yeah, it's very weird. A lot of weirdness going on.
Okay, we don't want to linger too long there.
That just shows the sun coming. I had no idea the sun just came through that morning. I thought it was a cool series of pictures. We could zip through that. And there's a picture of the room with him waking us up, playing flute for everybody, bringing everybody back to the light.
How many people are in here?
This picture, just a couple, just 4 of us.
Okay.
Just me and a couple of people from Chile and Fielder. And here's some of his artwork, which is some of the things that he saw. A lot of the Shipibo artwork is pretty recognizable.
And so what we're talking about here, just so the people will know, is we're talking about an ayahuasca experience.
Yeah. Ayahuasca being a medicine that people use down there for deep life issues. It's certainly not a party. It's certainly not something people look forward to doing or let's go do. It's more of a juncture in your life when you're seeking serious answers. And you need a guide to do it. That's what the shaman's role is. They're just regular people, but they're trained in taking people like into the jungle and out because it's dangerous.
And that's something that's, like you said, it's not a recreational. It's not going to the disco, taking some ayahuasca, hanging out. You're doing this one time or 2 times and getting your vision, and you're never doing it again, or you don't necessarily need to, or whatever.
If you met a Peruvian person and they were from there, they most of them would know I would never do that. Or if I did, why? What's wrong? Well, why do you need to do it? And Fielder had a record, which I thought was great. At the end of it all, him and his uncle had made a CD. He told me I always wanted to be a rock star, but my uncle told me, no, you're going to be a shaman.
So this is a calling for him, and
it's actually down the line of his family. Like they said that he didn't necessarily choose it. This is rather interesting. This is in a case in a very small town, and they call this the extraterrestrial. This is a very strange, real skeleton that a local archaeologist had dug up. Unfortunately, it's hard to see the teeth. He's got some very strange fangs, and those hands are very creepy. It's not a put together, assembled thing, and it's not a. He's also elongated skull creature, very odd. And see how there's no fontanelle? It's just one piece. Very odd. Kind of a disturbing picture. All the people there said they called it extraterrestrial. There's a baby one at the bottom, sort of like it looked like it might have been a twin or something. It's a little difficult to see, but it's just sort of one of those things. They weren't making a big deal about it. It was just there. It was the guy who dug it up had made a museum for it. One of those strange Peru things you just see and you're like, I don't know.
It's definitely odd.
Very odd. Kind of didn't feel good to look at it.
It would be interesting to get a Emmy, to look at it, or an archaeologist that had.
Oh yeah, they've gone. Yeah,
medical.
You'll see it. It's often called the Star Child, and this little guy just thought he was cute because he had blue eyes, just one of those little statues.
Now this isn't necessarily an old piece, is it here?
No, this is like made for tourists.
So this is Peruvian art, though.
Yeah. It's just a little Inca guy.
Very nice.
And we were just talking about, you and I, about how one of the things about that I learned down there is the shaman lady, who's my friend, told me, Zach, the whole world is like this. It's just you can't see it. This is in Blythe, California. So this is a petroglyph in our country that was ignored and driven over until people started flying over and saw it in the 30s. And they have, but this is in Blythe. There's some in Mesa, Arizona. Just a little perspective that it's not just in Peru. It's all around us.
And I think, too, that would be a good place to kind of preview some shows ahead of the time. That one of the shows, as a contributor and an adventurer, Zak Godwin, we're going to actually go out to some of these American, easier anyway, for us to get to places and explore some of these so we can bring them back for more shows.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting place in Illinois. Looks like a big, huge pyramid over there.
Yeah.
So very interested to see that.
Yeah, the mound cultures, the mounds of the United States. And this is actually...
and that actually, not to interrupt you, but we had, we'll show it here in a little bit, but you actually wrote or produced a record when you came back called Mound Builder that was inspired by some of this.
Yeah, I did. I was so ate up with the whole experience. I was trying to figure out like how to make the whole thing into some sort of a meaningful vision, and I did make a record, Mound Builder. We can talk about that in a second. It used a lot of the natural sounds and the Peruvian shaman flute.
Actually, the opening had some of it on it.
That's right, yeah. So, you can show that right after this. This is something I took from Peterborough, where my wife is from, in Canada. She's from Ontario, but this is a really interesting place called the Teaching Rocks, which is there's probably like 200 little petroglyphs carved over these rocks that were covered in moss, and I just love this little guy because he looked like a little alien.
Yeah, and the art is actually like almost iconography, very modern looking.
It is, and I love his little sun head, so I like him.
Or
a lot.
an eyeball, maybe.
Yeah, very strange. I just thought he was my favorite. But that's worth looking up. Peterborough, Ontario. The Teaching Rocks is really worth anyone's time.
Very nice.
If you want to, and there's our little tourist Inca. I had him hold my sacred rock that a friend of mine gave me to take pictures.
Okay, very good. So are we at the end of our photos? Oh, there's another photo.
Interestingly enough, if you zoom in on the guy on the top, this is classic Peru. Come down a little bit. There's a guy working on electrical line, not tied in, with no safety gear, just doing his thing.
Oh, man.
Very Peru.
I wonder if he's got a grounding strap on.
But if you want to show any of this or come to the studio, I'll show any of this.
Okay, I think that's the last of that. So we are, let's go back to, where's my button here?
We can see ourselves, but.
There we go.
Hey, what's up, Timmy?
Hey. So we have, let's do the show and tell.
Okay.
A bit.
So when I came back, I had, I'm a musician and I had been making records for years, but I was thinking to myself, this isn't anything like I've ever wanted to do before. I just wanted to make a record where it didn't even have lyrics. It was just animal sounds and flutes and sounds of the earth and so forth. But I made this record called Mound Builder, which you have kindly allowed me to cover up with.
And it's an actual record, too.
Yeah,
there are CDs available, and it is available on Apple iTunes.
But here is a mound that is right down the road in Nashville. It's in Pegram, Tennessee, or Kingston Springs, and it's the Mound Bottom Mound, and it's very large and huge. And I just realized that everything is sacred all around us, and there's all kind of magic everywhere. You don't have to go to Peru.
There's
it's
a connection. There's a weird connection.
Very odd connection. So.
The world's smaller and always has been smaller than we anticipated.
And this is the inside. We've all been, probably a lot of people around here have been through that tunnel. This was dug by Montgomery Bell, but it's just at the Narrows of the Harpeth, it's a hole that they dug for a mill. But I just thought, my mind was in such a state of observation when I came home that we just took that picture and so forth.
And for the international and people around the United States that don't know, this is in the Nashville area.
This is in the Nashville area.
So.
Oh, and incidentally, this cover and this are actual copper plates that were found in Indian mounds in Florida, Mount Royal, Florida. So this is actually a black and white picture of a copper carved plate that was dug up by a guy named C.B. Moore around 1910, and it's just so far out. It could have been from anywhere in the world. It looks like aliens, UFOs.
Look how perfect the circle is.
Yeah, and that is almost the symbol of Peru, or of Cusco. They use that symbol. So it was just something to me looking around when I came back from Peru and observing what was all around me that I hadn't seen. I had to go to Peru to realize what was right in Tennessee.
Very good. Yeah, and like I said, we're going to be going out to some of these places and doing some live reporting from there. So, and also, once again, I want to say that if you go to Apple iTunes, you look up Zak Godwin with a K, Zak, Godwin, you can get this and a couple other records. I think you've got.
Got a couple records out there.
So so check him out. It's good stuff. Very good stuff.
Thank you so much. These are some objects that I brought back from Peru that I thought might be interesting to see. So we can talk about that as you see fit.
Let's take a look at some of them.
Okay. Well, here, just a lot of people want to hear about ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is just a root, and this is a section of a slice of a root. And a lady gave this to me, and it's just a little necklace that I took. So it's just a root that grows in the forest. Ayahuasca is a combination of 2 different roots, and this is one of them.
So if we were to start munching on this, we wouldn't get anything off of it.
We
wouldn't go on some spiritual journey.
No.
There has to be a catalyst and a process for this.
There is, yeah. And so just chemically speaking, one of the ingredients is DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine, which processes in the body very fast. Like if you give it to yourself purely, it's out of your body in 10 minutes. The chemistry genius of ayahuasca is they figured out another herb that blocks those. It's a MOI inhibitor, and it blocks that, so it allows you to stay in that state for hours at a time. Normally, if you're DMT's in everything, it's in grass, bananas, it's a lot of stuff, but your body just takes it and goes right through it. It's something that's really like a death and pregnancy, intense moments, but it doesn't last a long time. So their gift of the Shipibo people in this case was that they were able to synthesize a way to stay in that state. And that's what the shaman is for, is to help you in that state, to stay, no, get away from that. That's a bad plant. That's a bad spirit. Keep you to the light,
So what about the cup here?
So this is some interesting artifacts that we brought back. This is a stone cup, which is just something I was real fascinated with. It's had a little repair on it, but it's just something from antiquity. I feel like this is probably over 1,000 years old. I can't exactly say, but it's definitely not a Taurus reproduction. It's just fascinating to see, and this is likely a ceremonial cup because it contains such a small amount of liquid. It wouldn't be for any kind of drinking of corn beer stuff. I suspect it might have been used for ayahuasca ceremony. I don't actually know, but it's just such a neat piece. I met a guy who was selling some really special stuff, and I bought a couple of things off him.
The fact that is stone, and this isn't it doesn't seem like a clay or anything. I mean, that's actually...
Oh yeah, it's hard. That'll chip your teeth type stone. This is really fascinating. I just like this little guy because he had a beard like me, and he also had a funny little hat, but he is listening with his ear. Now this turns out to be actually African. It's Ashanti art. A part of Peru that people don't know about is the Afro-Peruvian situation, which is when the Spaniards got there, they brought African slaves with them. So there's, as long as the Spaniards have been there, there's been people from Africa. And there's a whole culture of that. There's a music, there's a style of food. Black people have been there as long as the Europeans have been there. So there's a whole combination of that. And this little fellow, I just thought he was actually a Peruvian, but he's actually some African art. He's made out of a composite of lead, gold, and copper. He's very heavy, and I just liked him. I thought he was cool, but I learned when I got home he actually wasn't. I thought how weird, because beards are very rare there.
Right.
This is one of my favorite pieces. This is a meteorite, and it's very heavy and magnetic, and it's something I found. I became obsessed with the fact that they were all over the place, and I realized that when everyone's like, they didn't have metal, they had plenty of metal. It was just came from space. It might not have been steel forged the way we did it.
Right, but and now was this used for a tool or anything in antiquity? Or
a gentleman told me that they used it to make some of this tourist art. I don't know how that happened or if it was true, but I asked him, I said, "How'd you make this?" And he said, "Meteors." So, okay. And I said, "Can I see it?" And he said, "Yeah." And I wanted to buy it because, "You want this?" It's nothing. I said, "No, I want this." So this led me to all this other stuff because I started asking people about meteors. This is something you were interested in. This is a piece of iron that is used in a bolo, which is their swinging weapon. Pretty serious, as you know. You've picked that up. It's quite heavy.
Yeah, and you see this sort of groove in the center. That you see that a lot in things that are artifacts that are found in, I think, sometimes. Mm-hmm. Now, you said you don't really know if this is actually from antiquity or not.
I doubt that is from antiquity. I think that was more made, but it just showed you, like, for instance, like iron comes from space too, and there's a lot of ways to attain it, even if you couldn't smelt it. It may be, but I know this is actually from outer space. So
yeah, and you can tell. I mean, this is not a rock. This is metal. It is just
Yeah, he's fully magnetic. It'll pick up on a magnet.
It feels very, metallic.
Yep.
So
that was interesting. And so this is not maybe as interesting to other people, but it's just a beautiful piece of ancient, like really, really old wood that was like a ceremonial plate. Some of this stuff, it may be on the borderline of antiquity, legality, but I felt pretty good about it. And it's just just something that I thought was a real special piece. So forth and so on. One of the more interesting things I found down there was these drilled crystals, which you can show to the camera if you want. Crystal is very hard to drill, and I thought it was real fascinating. It clearly wasn't drilled with a metal tool. It was some other way.
And you can tell that they're not even. The holes, this one looks a little straighter than some of the other ones we looked at, but
yeah.
You said that you saw one earlier we held up that you could tell that they had drilled in one way and then
they
flipped
one
it over.
right here. You can hold that up. That was something we saw when we were looking at it real close, but if you look, there's like almost 2 levels to it. It's kind of hard to see on the camera.
Yeah, kind of.
But they're real magical and special. They have a real feeling to them. Some of this stuff, these crystals will eventually go back to Peru. I've only seen these in a museum in Lima and one in New York City. I expect them to be Mochi culture, which is a northern part of Peru. Something real special.
Very nice. Very nice. They do have a nice balance to them.
Yeah, they feel good. They feel good. And just a couple little things. These are just gifts from friends in Peru. These are nothing old or new, but a friend of mine, Jose, gave me these as meditation. Here we go. Got my backwards to the camera.
One of them
but they're just nice for holding and meditating. They've got little pressure points on them. But this is the kind of thing you would find a lot in Peru. It's all very stone, earth, wood, metal type stuff. It's, it's not all of it's very earth-based.
Yeah, this has a lot of details you wouldn't necessarily see.
Yeah, you got to kind of look at what is it? Like it looks like a happy guy, looks like a ship, it looks like a urchin.
It has an eye.
It has an eye, so they're weird. But a real close friend of mine down there gave me these when I was leaving, and they're real valuable to me.
Very nice.
And
very nice.
Just at the end, this is just modern. This just shows you the kind of thing they make down there for just modern level. This is silver and quartz, amethyst, and real pretty. My friend Karen gave me this. Very beautiful.
It is the same eye motif.
Yeah, a lot of the eye.
So
little show and tell and so forth. This is a Peruvian textile that someone gave us.
We also have, we're going to go out with some of the mound builder music playing.
All little cities, guys. Tim, thank you so much. I hope you're able to cover some informative things. It's a great honor.
Well, I definitely
Tim Blaine Show, everybody. Tim Blaine.
Exactly.